Hi, good morning. Welcome to the Business Spotlight series. I'm here with Roy Fishwick from Cleveland Tubes and Steel. How are you doing, Roy?
Good, thank you.
Thanks very much for joining us today. If you could give us a bit more background as to who you are, what you do, how long you've been doing it for, please, Roy.
Yeah, so I'm the managing director of Cleveland Steel and Tubes. I've been there for, well, depends how you count it, but certainly 35 years. I used to work there in the school holidays because it's a family-owned business. My stepfather established it 52 years ago.
Hmm.
Um, I'm a graduate zoologist actually, but also have an MBA, which I've had for about 30 years now. But um, I've worked as the operations manager, works manager, and then the MD for the last 14 years.
Excellent. So a very long career within the same company, which is quite rare these days. What made you go from, say, zoology then into the family business? What was that step like for you?
To be honest, I'm old enough that when I was a graduate, it didn't matter what you were graduate in. So you could
Hmm.
do a degree in a subject you loved, and you could get a management training position after university without too many problems. There was always a standing joke that zoologists either taught it or became accountants. But in fairness, I had a
Yeah,
general management role.
yeah.
I'm trying to think who it was with now. Well, those years ago, a company called Beaver Foam, I think, in Derbyshire, which was then allowed me to focus on works management, which is what I wanted to do as a
Mhm.
job. Zoology
Yeah,
doesn't pay. That was never going to be a real option because you can't earn a proper living doing it.
sure. Fair point. So in terms of the company and how it's developed over the years, what is it that kind of people go to you guys for over other people in your sector?
We're a niche business, to be honest. So we've got about 95,000 tons of steel pipe in our yard in Dalton.
Hmm.
Historically, the business model has always been the same. We buy surplus, downgrade, reject, second-hand material from the oil industry, and we repurpose it into construction. And that's what we've always done. We have had forays into steel sections, which we're currently doing now because of the low carbon, embodied carbon targets that people have got for construction. But fundamentally, people come to us because we've got stuff that nobody else has got and we're cheap. That's the other side of it. At the end of the day, we offer a discount. So you can get
Sure.
what you can't get elsewhere, you can get it from stock. So, as an
Hmm.
example, we're dealing with an inquiry at the moment for 20,000 meters of of pipe that is for a job that's supposed to start in April and no orders have been placed. They won't
Hmm.
get that from the mills for five
Yeah.
months. So, if we can help them, we can get the order in be days. If not, that project will be late.
Hmm.
So, you can see the benefit of somebody with inventory like we've got.
Yeah, yeah, sure. So you're pretty unique in a marketplace then in terms of being able to, I suppose,
I think
work
we're
supply and
very
demand.
unique. We don't have I mean, we've got 5 years of inventory. That's one way we're
Hmm.
unique. So we don't buy
Yeah,
material knowing when we'll sell it. We've got no idea when we'll sell it when we buy it. We've
yeah.
got no fixed business patterns. We don't buy unless it's a good deal. We can't order material because we're buying people's surplus and waste. So they
Hmm.
can't ring somebody up and say, look, I'm a bit short. Can you scrap some more stuff for me? That's not
Yeah,
how
yeah.
life works. So we are an unusual business model, but that comes with being family owned. So the family have accrued their assets rather than strip the business of cash all the time.
Hmm.
So in my 12 years as MD, the inventory's gone from 60,000 to 95,000 tons. Now, that's clearly absorbed a lot of cash, but also it allows us to do a heightened level of trading and make more profit year on year, more or less.
Sure. So how's that journey been then over your time as well? Let's reflect on it as MD. Um, if there's a word you can describe it and then expand on it.
It's interesting, but that's partly because we're part of a group as well. So my job,
Hmm.
I've been in the same place for 35 years, and I've very rarely had 2 years the same.
Hmm.
And that comes out of either different projects within the company or within the group. I've been to America, Germany, Holland, doing projects and things like that. The other thing is that steel is a very volatile product in terms of prices. So the price halves and doubles roughly every 10 years. So you've got to deal with those economic cycles.
Yeah.
So there's times when business is easy and there's times when it's phenomenally hard.
Mhm.
And then in the recent times, going back to Trump's first term and his section um, 232s, I think they are 301s, I can't remember now.
Mhm.
But basically, when I started 30 odd years ago, we had a business structure to protect ourselves from tariffs and anti-dumping, and it all went away. I've never actually had that problem in my working life. Now it's one of the most significant aspects of our environment is trying to deal with the tariffs, quotas,
Yeah.
and then the duties that have been charged.
So how has that been then as a leader of the organization to, I suppose, navigate if it's not something you've done before? How have you found that?
Uh, Go back to interesting.
Yeah.
It's a challenge, but it's a challenge for some of the wrong reasons, to be perfectly honest. So we've been around a long time. We know what we're
Mhm.
doing. We're quite confident in what we can do. The big issue with the well, that's actually with both things that are affecting us. So there's the tariffs, which have been triggered by Trump, which everybody knows. Basically, it depends what day of the week it is, which side of bed he fell out of as to where you're at with the tariffs.
Yeah.
Um, and then they've just been struck down, so he's brought back in 15%, and the 15% affects Britain adversely because we weren't being affected by the agreement in
Mhm.
place before it. So it's just like rolling the dice. And then there's something called the carbon border adjustment mechanism, which Europe have brought in, which is a carbon tax on steel. And that can be 200, €300 a ton. So we do about 30% of our business is export. And at the moment, we've got customers who don't want to buy off us because they don't understand how much duty they might have to pay if they bring it in out of the UK. God
Mhm.
bless Brexit and all that. Um, but the other facet with that is that the EU didn't actually announce the final conditions of this coming in on the 1st of January of this year until the 16th of December. So, in terms of how do you cope with it? Well, the answer is you've just got to learn as quickly as possible, each one day at a time, because you don't get enough time
Sure.
to plan. You're actually all the time at the moment thinking on the hoof, which is probably why my works manager background suits, because that's what
Mhm.
that's like. In the works environment, things go wrong and change on an hourly basis. Well, at the moment, it feels like we've got a political and economic climate that's doing the same.
Yeah. I was interviewing a chap from Chris, it was from iBoss, who's a fund managers and asset manager company, but he was just saying that volatility is the new norm. So it's kind of people wanting old ways of doing things. It's like they've left. That's not in terms of the next few years that volatility is into expecting that and to be able to lead through that and manage that. Either it's exciting or it's it's the wrong business for you kind of thing to kind of be in this zone at this point in time. But it's a good share. How have you found it personally to kind of do it? Is it exciting for you to kind of have that as well as perhaps you prefer it the other
It's
way, but
it's not exciting in the respect of the fact most of it's negative.
yeah,
So it's a fight. You sort of have to take a deep breath, pull up your socks, and decide you're going to
yeah,
have a crack at it. And from my personal perspective, and my stepfather taught me this, we don't accept having things done to us. We don't just
mhm,
accept it.
yeah,
So we're lobbying, we're trying to find angles, we're reading the regulations, we'll appoint lawyers if we need to. That is, you've got, it's all right that this is the things that's happened, but what can you do to try to affect them? What can you
mhm,
do to interpret them favorably? What can you do, if possible, to totally ignore them? That's another option potentially.
yeah, yeah,
And you've got to explore those things because if you don't, you're just a victim of what's going on. And it can be
right,
pretty profound. We have a business in the US, turns over 160 million. Their duties, levies, and legal fees last year were $9 million. So
okay,
that's the profit out the window straight into loss.
yeah,
And that's literally nothing that they've done for themselves and nothing they can do anything about. So
yeah,
you can't afford to be a victim of these circumstances, and even less so if you're a niche business, because the law doesn't even think about you. It doesn't treat you badly. It ignores you. It doesn't know you exist.
sure,
We have been affected multiple times in my working life by what I call unintended consequences. So the
hmm,
great and the good bring in a regulation, legislation, or a standard, and you go, "Oh, well, what about us?" And they go, "What do you mean, what about you?" And then you explain what we do, and it's like, "Oh crap, that that doesn't really fit." And the perfect example is the carbon border adjustment mechanism, CBAM. That's
yeah,
supposed to be a carbon tax so that low carbon steel is the only steel allowed into Europe. doesn't allow for circular economy. So all of our product is 95% carbon saving. That's proven with
Mhm.
environmental product declarations because it's repurposed waste. But the CBAM regulation has no allowance for it. So our product gets taxed at maximum carbon going into Europe currently.
So is that an example of people creating rules and regulations with good intentions, but not actually part of the sector? That
Possibly.
yeah.
I'm a bit more cynical as I get older. I think it's people with good intentions being led up the garden path by large industry who know damn well what they're going to get out of it.
Okay, fair play. I understand that. Which is again comes back to defending your position and kind of being wary of what people are trying to do.
Yeah.
Um, in terms of the challenges and opportunities then for the steel industry that you're in that you can foresee, what are those?
All of the challenges currently
Yeah.
are based around duties, tariffs, and the carbon tax
Hmm.
because they're actually, you're talking about, I mean, as an example, the mid-year this year, the safeguarding, as they call it, which is the quotas and tariffs, get changed again or reviewed. Well, they're talking about halving the quotas and doubling the tariffs. So
Hmm.
steel coming into Europe from the wrong places, in quotes, could be tariffed at 50%. The UK wants a trade agreement with Europe, so without question, in spite of the fact we seem to never get the steel strategy that the government are promising, it's now, I don't know, 8 months late and counting. Um, they're going to need to have a system that looks a bit like the European one, or the Europeans aren't going to let us in. They've got no reason to anyway. So we're going to end up with quotas and tariffs that affect the UK simply to try and maintain relationships with Europe and the US. And I think they'll be quite challenging because we export 30%, as I've already explained. That's currently a real problem because nobody dare buy because they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
We import 60 to 70% of material because steel is a global product and the UK's got restricted manufacturing capacity. That 60% could all end up getting tariffed at 50% coming in. Now, you want to be cynical some more, then actually what happens in a year or two's time is all the steel prices in Europe and the UK and the US have gone through the roof. The consumers will be footing the bill left, right, and centre. But all my inventory, the 95,000 tons, will have just gone up 30 or 50% if we've got anybody left to sell it to.
Fun and games. So how much of your time is spent kind of navigating, I suppose, the sector as to what's going on in these with tariffs and over actually, doing the job that you, I suppose, originally
It's,
employed
I
to
probably
do?
spend 20 or 30% of my time. It's more complicated than that, but I probably spend
Mhm.
20 to 30% of my time at the moment trying to navigate all of this because it's
Mhm.
new from
Sure.
January. But then, because of what's been going on, um, I've been involved with promoting our business as reused, repurposed steel. I'm very much at the forefront of reused steel. So if you
Mhm.
Google it, my name and Cleveland Steel's name comes up left, right, and centre. So I probably spend 30% of my working life still educating, positioning our business, promoting green steel, as in the
Mhm.
circular economy, reuse and repurpose. And that was originally started back in 2012 with a lot of lobbying and partnerships with associations, trade associations, etc. But that was just to protect our business model, to ensure that the standards
Mhm.
and regulations allowed us to exist.
Yeah,
I don't need people to let me trade well. I just need people to let me trade, and then we can see if we can figure out trading well.
sure. That is a summary. So, in terms of your biggest lesson, Roy, through of being MD of the company or in business, what would you say that is, if there's one you could share?
I want to give you two, if that's all right, because the first
Be
one
my
was
guest. Yeah.
the first thing my stepfather said to me when I sat down in his office on my first day, and it's this is sort of two together, but we'll use it as
Yeah.
one. And he just said to me, "Look, you need to remember it's all a game."
Hmm.
And in fact, that's incredibly powerful because when the stress is getting to you and everything else, if you think of it as a game, sort of
Hmm.
nobody died in quotes, you've got to play the game. How hard can you play? Can you win? Tactics, strategy, all of that comes in. And then he followed that with, and it's all about the money. But that's a slightly different thing. What he means is you've always got to remember in business, if you take your eye off the cash,
Hmm.
You might be doing a whole bunch of stuff for no reason at all or no sensible benefit. This is in private business.
Yeah.
Um, so that was very, at the time, I didn't appreciate it. By now, you actually realize it's a very powerful statement and it's very liberating. In fact,
Sure.
it helps you deal with the pressure and the stress because he's also said, because of course you can lose a game. You just got
Hmm.
to remember, have another go, roll the dice again, whatever. And then the other one, which I've tempered slightly, is not to believe anybody. Um, and I used to say not to trust anybody, but that's not entirely fair because you can trust somebody, but you mustn't believe everything that you're told. And in this day and age, it's
Hmm.
critically important because there's so much bad information out there.
Sure.
If you don't have the data, you can't make good decisions.
Yeah.
And people will give you the data that they've got to impress you, but it might only be 10% of the available information, or it might be a barefaced lie given to them by somebody else,
Yeah.
or how mixed they're in. So you can trust somebody 100% and be told a barefaced lie, and they've been honest because the person that gave them the information was lying, or the information is simply
Mm.
wrong or misunderstood. And ultimately, maybe I should have been an accountant, but I am a numbers and a data type. I don't honestly think you can be very successful on hunches and feelings alone.
Yeah.
You've got to
Numbers
have
tell
the
the
analysis,
story.
something to back it up.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. That's a great share in terms of yeah, the game of business. There is a sort of good book called The Great Game of Business. I think I don't know whether you've have heard of
Okay.
it, read it, and but yeah, business fundamentally comes down to generating cash and making cash. People say, "Oh, it's not all about the money," but if you need to have your principles and values running the ability to make cash and generate cash ultimately to do it. So yeah, if the numbers don't stack up, then the business won't last too long. But some really good shares in there. I appreciate that. Thank you. So, what is your inspiration to carry on doing what you're doing in markets such as this?
Fundamentally, it is a family business,
Hmm.
but the family are less involved, and the old guy's 92 now. But the employees are people I've worked with, some of them for 30 years.
Hmm.
So I've got a strong tie to the people. I've got a strong tie to the business itself. It's a part of me, to be fair. Um, and the other thing, which the personality assessment are things that were done years ago, but I've got a very strong ethic in the sense that I really struggle with things not being done well.
Hmm.
As I actually find it almost impossible not to get involved if I see something being done incorrectly or badly. Um, and it means a lot to me to see things done that way. So,
Yeah.
me coming out of the business, which is something I'd like to do gradually, um, then I need to see the structure in place to allow me to do that, especially in changing times.
Yeah. How big's the team, or what's the number of members you've got there?
It's not big. We're 50 altogether. That's 25, 28
Mhm.
yard men, balance being office staff, admin and sales. We've got a six-person sales team. So it's quite a tight
Mhm.
unit. You know everybody. You can name everybody.
Yeah, like a family, extended family, I guess, through there.
Yeah.
Nice. And in terms of people or advice for people starting out, or perhaps even for yourself, if you were to look back, um, going into what you were doing, what's that piece of advice?
Two things really. I mean, the obvious one is you've got to work hard.
Hmm.
Life owes you nothing. I think there's more and more a perception somehow that that's not the case. Life owes you nothing. The only luck is bad luck. You can make good luck by working hard.
Hmm.
Good luck's winning the lottery. Good luck doesn't land in your lap very often. Otherwise, it's seeing the opportunity and taking it. That's not luck. That's actually applying
Hmm.
yourself.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that's quite important. And then the other thing, which I think is critical, is not accepting things you don't like. And I've made that point, and it really is. It sounds basic, but it doesn't matter if that's the law. It doesn't matter if that's the rule. If you don't like it, challenge it, work
Hmm.
with it, find the avenues and the ways. I'm not talking about being abjectly criminal, by the way, but you take my point.
Yeah, I
It's one of
understand
these.
that. Yeah, yeah.
Um, it's funny how many people just stop because the computer says, or stop because they've been
Yeah.
told such and such by somebody. Well, if that's not what suits the business or you, don't accept it, move
Hmm.
past it, look behind it.
That's where we come into creating your own opportunity and creating your own luck by having that kind of persistent attitude and not accepting things at face value just because, as you say, someone who 10, 20 years ago had been given some information that created something that said you couldn't do something.
Mm.
Challenging that, that's I think that's where we are as human beings, aren't we, at the moment? Just kind of
Yes, absolutely.
having that battle between what's gone on in the past and what can be created in the future. So another good share. In terms of latest news, Roy, just before we finish up, or even it's a case of sharing contact details, website, if people like to get in touch with you, feel free to do that now.
Yeah, it's Cleveland Steel and Tubes. So the website is basically um, clevelandsteel.com. It's dead easy to find, to be honest.
Mhm.
I'm Roy Fishwick. I think if you look on LinkedIn, I won't be that hard to find, courtesy of the surname.
Yeah.
It's one of the things I must say about being called Fishwick. It's not hard to track down. But more importantly, if people are interested in sustainability, green steel, low carbon steel for projects or
Mhm.
for like construction projects, even just cheaper steel, we serve people from household projects up to 3, 4,000 ton jobs. We literally, anybody's a customer.
Fantastic.
Um, thank
Share
you.
your contact details as well on the video copy underneath. So if people want to get in touch, they can easily do that for you. Thanks very much, Roy. It's been a pleasure talking with you for sharing all that you have, and I wish you all the best for the next 35 years.
Thank you.
Cheers, Roy.